I've got a confession to make.
I need to get this off my chest. As a business owner, we all make mistakes.
I've got to confess.
And we are live once again. Hello, Kim Barrett. Happy New Year. Happy 2018.
Happy New Year. Doing awesome, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I must admit, smashingly well. I'm really enjoying this time of year. I always enjoy this time of year. I think people are just nicer in general, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, everyone's actually happy.
Now, it's a sad truth that for majority of the people I know and majority of people in the world, it's like this time of year is how most people want to live their life. And sadly, I reckon maybe in about the next week, it's all going to kick back into reality. And then sadly from there. So to everyone watching this who's just kind of gone, hang on, I actually got to live like I want to for 2 weeks. Make that your goal of 2018. Make the jump. Because that's how I get to live. Is that how you live, Kim? Do you do the things you want to do?
Pretty much every single day. That's pretty good.
I kind of think that's like the whole purpose of being an entrepreneur. That's what you're going to kind of work your way up to. Now, we've got a big episode today. We've got a huge one. So in the last episode of the podcast, we spoke about our biggest lessons of 2017. And that was, honestly, after it for about an hour, I was still reflecting and thinking about the points and your points. So that was a really good episode, in my opinion anyway. In this episode, however, we're going to be talking about what we're going to be doing differently in 2018. So this means that I can already see the eyes rolling a little bit. This better be good. I'm ready for it, Kim. What are you going to be doing differently?
Well, so mine's funny enough. I actually did a live about it, and you were on there as well. So mine was more so for 2018. Looking for one specific area that I've needed to focus on this year and actually asking for help. So the question I posed was, who could you be if you asked for help? So that's what I'd been thinking about. So the biggest thing I'm doing differently this year is and I've always had big focus on business, big focused on like creating wealth or relationships and things like that. And one of the ones I've let slide is health. So this year, the thing I'm doing differently is putting that kind of at the top, because I know that if I'm super healthy, it's going to fuel everything else. I'll have even more energy than I have now, and be able to do even more things better. So the biggest thing I'm doing differently is I've got my brother's accountability. This kind of there's lots of things I'm doing differently, but in this one area, I have my brother as an accountability partner that I'm training with. He's actually going to be cooking my lunches for me because he's working in my office this year as well. So he'll be cooking my lunches for me, just keep me super on point from a health perspective, because that's probably the one area or one of the areas that I let slide the most in 2017. And yeah, I just feel like it's time to make a change, and especially because I do so much speaking and traveling, I need to be in good health. I was actually blessed year before last, I was very knackered at the end of the year. This year, I was still good. I was still doing a bit of work over Christmas, New Year's, catching up with family, all those things we do normally, but I wasn't drained like I was the year before. So I'm very interested to see if I have a big focus on health this year, how much better I can be by the end of the year.
Dude, there's two really good points there, but I like that so much. I think that's awesome. So I'll dig into this. This is a two-parter. I just want to make some comments and then we'll go back on this one. But the first thing is, I don't think anything is more important than health. When I got into business, I got quite overweight and drained. I ended up maxing out at about 97 kilos. And now I'm sitting at about 82. And I cannot believe how differently my mind works. So it's not about the appearance. It's not about the way, those things aren't necessarily the most important bit, but how well I function and how clear my thinking is when health isn't important. I really think it's a huge one. But I've almost skimmed over the number one thing, which I'm pretty much stolen from you at this point, is I think is a crucial question to be asked on that, which you mentioned about who. It's there's such a great thing when we set a goal, just that one little question on the end about who can help me get there, or who can be the support, or who can be the accountability is huge. So I love this point so much. Now, how did you rope your brother into this?
Well, my brother actually, back in the day, so we actually used to run a business together called K-Boss Fitness, sold health and fitness supplements. So I actually got him into going to the gym. This is back when I was like in the best shape. I was like competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, won a silver medal for Australia, all this sort of stuff.
Awesome.
So when we were doing that, I got him into the gym, and so he's basically continued along. He plateaued out for a little while, but he's come back and he's working in health and fitness at the moment for a lady in Perth who has a health and fitness business. She trains ladies all over the world pretty much. So he works with her now, and he's also working with my sister and her partner in their business, and they're going to rent some office space off me. So I was like, well, if you come into the office every day, you've got to train. Right. So if you're going to train, we may as well go back to the old school days of training together and like hold each other accountable. Cause this is when like we got we were getting very strong, because we would go train jiu-jitsu, then go to the gym. You know, I think I was benching like 120 kilos, squatting like a ton, we were like lifting a lot of, but we were training every single day. Like it was hardcore. So I think I was
photos. I've seen some photos of you in the jiu-jitsu outfit type thing, or the get. I'm not sure what you call it.
Gi.
In the gi. Dude, you were fit. You were ripped and like a lean mofo in that area. So I imagine you did quite well. Look very, very athletic. So I suspect you'll probably get back to that pretty quick by the sound of it.
Well, I'm hoping so. I wouldn't mind going back to jiu-jitsu again as well, because it was fun. But even then, it's like I was still in the big division. So even at my leanest, I think I was like 95. So there was some big mofos in those divisions. The guy who took me for the gold was like a big, huge Russian dude, like 7 foot. So once you get past a certain weight, it's just open. So it was a bit crazy. Yeah. But I'm definitely keen to get back there. So it's it's a big one for me. But Mr. Charles, sir, what about you? What's one of the big things that we kind of had a little bit of a sneak peek on each other previously before we started recording, but what's one of the big things for you for 2018?
Yeah, so this has been a really good question to think about before recording the episode. And I think I come up with about 10, and I've had to narrow it down to picking the top ones. So the number one thing I want to do differently in 2018, and this is something from there, it's a KPI more than anything, but I want to track how much work is being done when I'm doing nothing. So what this is all about is the idea of measuring the amount of leverage I'm creating. Like, how good are the systems and people and everything like I'm expanding, and everything from there, versus how much time I'm actually spending on making them run or being a part of. So huge priority is to track the amount being done when I'm not working at all.
It's so good. Like the best part I think about doing this with you is the way that you think as well is so like methodical and specific. Because it's like, I say mine's like, cool, health, and you're like, well, my specific KPI is measuring the specific amount of time of this. I'm just like, I love it. I wrote that down before, because it's like how much work is being done when I'm doing nothing. Because you've done courses on it. You've obviously built all your businesses around that as well, which is like the leverage standpoint. And I won't go too much into that, because that may be one of my second or third points. I can't reveal that just yet. But I just love the fact that you think in that regard and build that big amount of leverage into it and have it as a key focus, because so many people, I think, get busier by giving themselves more work to do or doing more things. And especially when you start to get a team, I think the biggest trap that people fall into, and you probably see it when people get VAs through work with OA and everything, is that they still hold on to everything, even though they have people there to help them. And it's like, well, the objective of bringing someone on is to lighten your workload, not hold on to all the stuff that you were doing before.
Absolutely. It's, in all honesty, that's probably one of the biggest failure points I see with people hiring in general. A lot of people who come to work with me or do work with me, that's the point they're at, where they've built something or built leverage, which is an extension of themselves. So instead of their business being a separate machine from them or a separate entity and treating it like that, they actually use people to extend what they can do. So they amplify themselves instead of kind of building a separate machine. So that's a massive one from there. Now, the other point you come back to is like, yes, I absolutely think like that. So I look at this as like a bit of a domino. So naturally, this has been something that I do is, but I haven't been tracking it too well. So the thing for me is like, I really want to track that output, because if I can, 5x or 10x that over the year, that number will ultimately increase, a whole bunch of more leverage and everything else that I want to run well in the business.
Now, can I ask you a question? Because I think a lot of people probably heard you say that as that KPI, but I think a lot of times afterwards they go, how the hell do you even measure that? So like, what are the things that you're going to track that will allow you to measure specifically how much work is being done when you're doing nothing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've already started kind of thinking my way through that as well, because that's the part. Like often we have things we want to track in our business. How do we want to do it? Ultimately, it comes down to outputs. So in my mind, okay, and this is, work with me here. People on the video, it might be easier because you can see the hand movements, but for listening from there, is I envision my team as groups. Okay, so I envision, imagine all different cogs that work together. And we've probably all seen that diagram of, all the gears spinning around and working with each other. So what I envision is that I need to start measuring the output of these gears that don't require me and focus on leveling them up. So a really good example is at the moment, we're doing a podcast and we have a team that does the podcast. In the beginning, I have to, create systems and processes and find the people and design the flow and make the mistakes and work through it and revise it. But now that team can output, a podcast on their own. So now it becomes, how many podcast episodes can we create a month? And then that's a measurable output that doesn't require me. So it's stacking up those things and consistently measuring the outputs that don't require me and the ones that do, and then working out how can I get myself out of them, or being aware not to take on more of those opportunities. So this is, I know that starts to sound a bit complex and we might just have gone too deep too quick. So I completely get that. But that's something that I think by bringing that into awareness, it's going to help me make better decisions around what opportunities to take on or not take on. So if you're aware that there's certain type of work you go, okay, well, this requires more of me, you start to see that it's limited and you can become the bottleneck. But if you can be focused on creating outputs that don't require you and scaling them, doing more of those types of opportunities, then the output of the business goes through the roof, as well as, creating a lot more leverage on your time.
Beautiful. Love it. Perfect. Thank you for that. It's good for me as well, because I wanted to know too.
But that's the approach. I think that's something we'll follow through and I'll release more of as the episodes. And for people that are in the association mastermind, we'll definitely be giving you kind of the templates and systems I do in this, and you can see me go through these steps. Now, we've got to dig into number 2, Kim. So health is number 1. And dude, I'm quite happy to hear that, because it's I did that a few years back and it was one of the best decisions ever. But what is number 2? Where are we going from here?
So my number 2 is, and it's following the theme that you've kind of mentioned there. So something I didn't reveal and I couldn't reveal on the last podcast just because of people being around. I do a podcast in my office, so my door is shut, but obviously people can still hear, is we actually let some of our team go over just before Christmas. So some would say pivotal people in the company, but they, for many different reasons, it wasn't going to continue working into the future. So the biggest thing for me, and I've never had this yet in business, is putting in place a person, but this is under the umbrella of leverage, right? Building leverage into it, that understands enough of the actual strategy and not tactics of marketing to be able to speak with new clients when they come on board, ongoingly tweak and adjust client campaigns, but also start to do that for us. Because the whole time, ever since in the business, I've done pretty much 98% of our own campaigns. No one else has really touched them. So this year, my goal is, and I actually have a conversation tomorrow with someone who I think could take that role, and will eventually, my aim is to put that towards a CMO type role across Your Social Voice, is to find that person. And I've been listening, and Charley will probably smile with glee.
I'm reading already. I'm like, this is
Ray Dalio, obviously, Principles, the book. So I've been listening to that. It's a long book, so it's been taking a while to go through. But obviously, talking about the team that he would have, the attitude, the radical transparency, the ability to make sure that they deliver tremendous results. I feel like some of the people weren't meeting up to that in the organization. So now it's looking at how we have them, and anyone that we bring in is at that high standard and level. So that's really my goal for this year under leverage, is to bring that person into then, like, that's something that I put to for the entirety of our business so far. So if I can get rid of that, not get rid of, but if I can outsource that part to a person in my team that I have 100% certainty in, then I am truly pretty much only on the business, not in at all. So that's one of my big goals for 2018.
Dude, that is so good. That is, do you know what? I have to reference a few really interesting points there. So number one is, isn't it funny that I read the Ray Dalio book and then I hired Lisa, who is effectively the same thing you've just spoken about from there. I think that is such a crucial thinking. When it comes to a business, and this is obviously an opinion from there, but that hire you just mentioned is the most crucial hire when you get out of startup mode. So once you've validated your idea, you've got a product and service, like the ultimate way for you to really be able to remove yourself is that hire. So an outsourcing angel, like I was business partners, or I am business partners and still am. Please don't take that the wrong way, Lynn, when you're listening to this. I still want to be friends. But one of the things was, she was that person. I didn't necessarily recognize it as that role, but she was a person that was capable of thinking and making decisions in the business and being a huge driving force, and continues it. But when you move over to other things, or you look at other things, that's the role that allows, I think, it allows the business to grow on another level past yourself and move into a much more strategic thing. So that can be just such a huge thing, man. I think that's a phenomenal way to go there. Now, the second point I just want to make here is that, and I wonder your finding, I actually think, all right, I'm going to put it out there, that the most expensive mistake a business can make is average staff. Because when they're average, you keep them. If they were crap, you get rid of them. If they were excellent, you want to keep them. But that middle zone is actually the biggest and most costly mistake a business can make. We want to strive for excellence.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, it always happens, and it's funny because it's like, it's only ever little things. It's like you lose a client here, you lose a client there, something doesn't happen, there's a mistake. And it's not like they all happen in the period of a week. It's like a period of a year. So sometimes you almost forget. And then it's like, again, listening to that book, it was going through the same thing. It's like everyone has their scorecard, like you can't expect a different outcome with a person doing, like, look at their track record. You don't put on someone who's only ever scored a point in AFL, who's paid for 10 years, expecting them to kick 10 goals. It's just not going to happen. So when I was thinking of that, I was like, cool. And then one of our mentors will ask me the question when I was talking to him about, in a recent retreat, just like talking to him about the process of making this change. He's like, well, just think about this for a moment. How much money would you have made if every single sale you have ever made, because we do done for you services, so a month to month retainer, if every single sale you ever made stayed on, how much money would you be making a month? He's like, go work that number out. I looked at it, I was like, damn. It's like, that's a lot of money. Like, there's a lot of money that, like when you look at it over the last, 18 months, 2 years, do the calculations, and that's month on month that those people would be staying on. I'm like, when, there's several $100,000 a month in turnover that you could have kept having, would have made a big difference, So there's, when I looked at that, it just made the decision more clear. And then as well going, well, why should I expect anything less than a world-class person? Or why should I, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to have that. It's not that I can't pay them. It's not that we don't have the clients for them to service. There's no reason why we can't have someone world-class. So why don't we? Why do we settle for adequateness? I don't think that's a word, but I'll put it in there anyway. Inadequacy? So I can't say another one. Inadequacy. Yeah, inadequacy.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do we accept that? And that was another one of, I'll talk about that after, but thinking about that, I was like, well, yeah, it's time we've got to step the game up, and not anyone's problem, fault or otherwise, but it's just like, cool, that's another learning and a step in my business owner journey, I suppose, and having to do that, manage that change and make all that happen.
I think it's really interesting, but it's like, I find it very fascinating that when we're a startup or when we're a newer business, right, we're always trying to keep costs down. The mindset is just, I think it's all wrong for the next step. Okay. So when you're in a startup and you're trying to shoestring it, you're trying to validate your ideas, you're just trying to pay the bills in all honesty, and you're trying to move through that things. Often we can be like, not thinking about how to do it at its best level. Like, how do I execute this at a phenomenal level? But then this exciting thing happens. And it's like you get to a stage where you can start to afford to hire great people, or have the office where you want to build the culture, or, have the best tools or equipment. And that's where, in my opinion, that's where business starts to get a lot more fun. Like,
yeah,
when you have a baller working for you and doing amazing things for you regularly, like it just changes everything.
Yeah, 100%. And yes, that's the big thing. So I'm very much excited for that this year. So it's going to be pretty cool. But what about yourself, Charlie? What's number 2 on your list for doing different in 2018?
Ooh, number 2. This is more a theme word we're going to go with. And it's not far off what you've just mentioned there, in all honesty. I'm just quickly glancing on my list here because that's where I put it over here. But my theme I want to roll with for 2018 is do less better. And what I look from that is it's quite easy to get involved in a lot of projects. It's quite easy to have a lot of things on your plate or see all the opportunities. But I really want to raise the standards. So everything that comes out of my team or everything we get involved in, I want to focus on doing less work, but at a much higher quality. So if I'm going to do a podcast like we are now, like, go all in on that podcast and execute it really, really well. Like, even right now we're doing video and audio because we want to go for a higher standard. In the association, it's like, that's a mastermind group we're running. I'm not going to start 2 mastermind groups. I'm going to start 1 and do it really, really well and have the standard of things that come through that at a really high level. In the clients I work with, I want to do, the big stuff at a high quality. I don't want to be taking on a lot of smaller things and not delivering at that level. So all about high quality standards and all about doing less better.
Love it, man. That's so good. And it is, I think, so many people think about, I have to do more, I have to get more, I have to do, every opportunity that comes my way. And it's like, that's not always, and most of the times it's actually not the answer. It's just, and it's like, it's funny, like whether people believe in it or otherwise, but when you stop doing the small things bad, or you don't take on that little client that is going to be a pain, it's like you make like a declaration pretty much, and I'll go a little woo-woo for a second and come back to the universe that's your level. And this kind of ties into my point 3 as well. That's like the level that you're playing at, and that's it. And you're not going to accept anything else. And then it's funny what turns up when you do that.
Absolutely. I completely believe that as well. And I think when you set that intention, as you just kind of mentioned there, it's like it prevails into everything.
Yeah, 100%. So it's so good to hear you doing that. I think you've been probably on that track a little bit for the last year at least anyway. So it's, like, I'm excited to see what comes if you have that as your whole theme for the year in 2018.
Yeah, it's cool. No, but like, certainly you might even recognize this well, is like, have you ever, and you just kind of half thought of this in another way in your last post, but have you ever honestly invested hours into an idea or a concept or a person, and then the execution's not being where it should? And then it's like, well, actually, I didn't just waste the time in not executing it properly. I wasted all the brain power in coming up with the concept and doing all these other things. And it's like, I really knew before I got into that wasn't right. Like, if I'd invested that energy into what was already working for me and what I do well, I would have had a phenomenally better result.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree with you more. That happened so many times.
Oh, and I'll just laugh. It's like, at one point, this is a couple of years back, I was quite furious with the Facebook tracking pixel. I was like, this thing is cooked. I'm sick of this. And I reckon I spent a week building a concept for tracking. A whole week. And then I look back at the end of it, I look at it now and I'm like, what if you spent a week just making your ads better?
Yeah. Damn.
So sad. All right, man, it's time to kick into Kim's number 3. What is your number 3 you'll be doing differently?
Numero 3 is basically, I would say it's a theme as well, if you will. But it's basically either, and you can look at it in two ways, not settling, but then my good friend Matthew Mariol, expert when it comes to mindset and things like that, would say, well, you have a negation in there, so you shouldn't use it like that. So my reframe on that is setting a higher level for my expectations of myself, from my team, from life in general. So you probably notice that I'm actually wearing a different shirt than what I would normally wear. I normally have my Your Social Voice polo shirt on. I have 5 of them, same type, every single day. I rock them because I want to make a decision on what clothes to wear in the morning. But my interpretation when I've done that over and over again the last 2 years, that's been my work outfit, if you will. But I say, well, if I want to play at a higher level, my internal perception, I know this is not the case, but is that when I'm in business attire, look better, feel better, and I expect more from people, but also myself when I dress in a certain way. So I decided that this year, that every single day that I'm working, so if I'm doing work stuff, whatever it may be, is I'm going to have a dress shirt on. I'm going to actually I'm going to have a dress shirt on. I'm going to be focused, but I'm going to be setting a higher level of expectation for myself, actually, doing my hair, things, just little things like that. I was
thinking you're looking really good, man. The white shirt is working for you. That is definitely the look to rock.
So I thought for 2018, that's my thing, is to hold everything to that higher level of expectation. And the same, I don't know if we talked about it, but did we talk about the car on the last one?
We definitely talked about the Nissan deal, which I think is still amazing. Now, for the listeners who are coming in on this, Kim has a brand new Nissan. I would really suggest you go back and listen to the full story on the last episode about how he acquired that car. It's a phenomenal story. But feel free to dive into it now as well if you want to.
Well, I'll briefly touch on it. Is the fact that we managed to negotiate a deal where we will do some marketing, and in return we will get a car because I needed a new car. I didn't want to pay for one. So we managed to do a nice little deal there. But that's when I've since that point of time is when I set that expectation of what I can achieve, what I can do, what outputs I can generate as well. And since then, that week we had a tremendous sales week, which I think we'll touch on at the end. And since having that level of expectation and attitude, lots of different things have been falling into place and changing slightly for me, which I think has been really good. So and this is something that my girlfriend always, Lily, she is always, she never accepts ordinary or never accepts something generally. So for example, we went to New York for an event. We went to our first hotel. It was a ridiculously tiny room. I probably personally, if it was just me, probably would have just stayed there, but it was very small for 2 people. Moved to another hotel, which was much more expensive on her request. So we got there and we got up to and it was in front of Central Park, directly in front. So we got up and I think we're on the 8th floor. So you go up and you look out the window and you can see directly in front of you are the trees and Central Park. You can see everything. She's like, I'm not staying here. I'm like, why? She's like, well, we're paying for a room in front of Central Park. We should be above the trees, be able to see the whole view. It's not really acceptable that we pay this money and they're not full. So why do they put us on a lower floor? Why do we deserve to be down here? And I'm like, we just moved hotels, just got here. And I was like, look, all right, I'll call reception, see what they say. So I call reception and they go, and I said, look, just wondering, obviously we're here. I know you guys aren't full, but we'd appreciate a higher floor with a better view, if that's possible. And the lady's like, cool, types away on her keyboard. And she says, yep, not a problem. It'll be another 20 minutes. You have to wait because it's not clean yet, but we can get you on level 24. So 16 levels higher. So, and we're like, okay, cool. And then we go up there and it's a great, what I think is a great view. Lily's like, look, Kim, I probably would have still asked for another level, a couple levels higher because it goes up to 64. So we're not even halfway. So, but she's like, look, I appreciate what you've done. You got us to a higher level. So we'll stay here. It's got a beautiful view. So happy to stay here. But I would have.
I can barely hold my cheek. I'm like, Lily, you superstar. That is so good. Hopefully you will listen to this episode. I think that is phenomenal.
Yeah, so she's always holds me to that, and I'm like, oh, and I sometimes get frustrated. I'm like, well, no, why do I not, why don't I also have that expectation? Why don't I also hold that to be true? Or when I'm booking, go, hey, look, I know we'll come in here. I'd love at least level 30. Why don't I just ask for that at the beginning? Because I probably would get it. And it's always what you get. They say you get what you ask for, but I think the better phrase around that is that you get what you tolerate. So it's like, if you tolerate something, that's what you'll keep getting. If you keep pushing the boundaries of what you expect of yourself and others, then you'll keep getting more. But as soon as you tolerate stuff, then you'll consistently keep getting it.
That is so good. I think that you've rounded out number 3 incredibly strong here. And I love that story. And I love where it's come from as well, like the insight of the experience. Always find when we learn something in context, it sticks with us so much harder. Like even I'll be remembering that story. And I must admit, after the last episode where we were discussing like how you get your coffee, where you get a long black, but you make them put a dash of cold water in so you can drink it instantly. I've started doing that. I absolutely I'm not settling. But dude, what a winner. I think that is a great way just to approach life. And I think it'd be surprising how much overall you would get to experience more of just from that.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's the big one for me is, like in all areas, just keep stretching what's possible. And I'll make sure I remove that negation. If anyone ever asks me again, I'll make sure Matt's drilled that into me to stop using those negation. For anyone, just the context, for example, I said not settling. The brain doesn't actually process nots or negative keywords. So it actually just means that you're settling. So you need to have a positive forward-driven focus, not something where you're going, I don't want this or not that. Like not being fat means you'll be fat, as opposed to being shredded or whatever the other words you may use for that regard.
Fascinating, the amount of people that don't want to be broke that are broke. Versus the people that want to be wealthy. But that's a different topic for another day. Hopefully we'll be able to get Matt on here at some point. I tell you now, I don't think I've had so many people go, after working with Matt in some context, like just rave and share very, very unique insights. So we might do a whole mindset episode with Matt at some point, because he is just, by the looks of things, absolutely kicking some ass with that stuff.
So if I kick it over to you for the final one, Mr. Charley, 2018, what is your third?
My third, all right. So my number 3 thing here, and this is one, I actually revised this one a couple of times, but I'm certain on it. So number 3, what I'm going to be doing differently in 2018 is, and it's a very like woke statement. I'm feeling very woke right now. No, but I'm all about the people. In 2017, I was all about, let's say, the system. I was very focused on the system over from there. And in recent experiences, I've realized how important the people are. So I want to give some context to being all about the people. So number 1 is all about the people on my team. I really want to give to the people that I'm working with directly on a bigger level and pass on as much as I can about what I know and enable them to be the best they can be, like really strive for excellence on that. And that kind of ties into my other point. But the other part of that is I also want to make a conscious effort to be all about the people in a giving way. So I'm going to tie this in. A goal for 2018 for me is to take on a Padawan, little mini Jedi. I want to mentor someone and pass on everything I have to know. So the whole experience of having an apprentice and moving all that information into someone else under the constraint that they must then pass it on to someone else. And that's the deal. So if someone wants to come work with me, and just full disclosure is like that, obviously there will be a financial thing in that. That will be a paid thing. I want someone who's really going to value the whole experience and take all that information. But as a condition is a signed agreement that they will pass it on and then make that a condition for the next person. So I want to go a bit generational here. I want to start really moving down all the knowledge I've acquired and start having it move through the generations, but not just in my family, like not just like passing something on to my kids, but start passing things on to the people of the world. They're going to use it and get the most out of it.
The Apprentice Charley edition. I love it.
Absolutely.
If you do that, can I put one stipulation on top of your head there before Absolutely. You do that?
Sure.
Can you please record the whole thing if you weren't going to already?
Well, it's funny you should say that. So I've already been sending you some stuff, so you're not going to be surprised, but you may have noticed the amount of frameworks and systems and everything I've been making at the moment. So I just made a planning framework. I just made planning and goal setting framework. I made an accountability system. I made just a whole ton of stuff a personal management system, things I use to run my life. And of course, there's a reason for that. All this stuff is being documented in context so that it's digestible for someone else, so that I can start handing these things over. So yes, I definitely want to document the whole thing. It may never get released. It may just be for my own personal use. But
just share the links with me. That'll be fine. I just want to watch Charley on TV. That's all.
But like, surely at some point is like, in this last year especially, I've come to realize like how blessed my life is. Like, honestly, we spoke a little bit like this at the start, is like, I literally get to get up and do what I want to do every day, take on the projects I want to take on, work with the people I want to work with. It doesn't always go well. I don't want to phrase it in like, it's all uphill. I have my challenges as well. But every single day is a choice. And when I speak to most people, they don't have that. They really are doing a lot of things because they have to. And I'm like, right, well, it's time to move this on. It's time to start having more people operate from that level. So, my obligation to, I think everyone now, is to start moving on that information. Like, how can we have more people getting to operate like it's the week between Christmas and New Year's every day?
That's so. One of my clients has a program called the 5-day weekend. So it's such a good thing. But that was like, I heard such a great analogy, and I got to give a shout out to one of our buddies, Jeremy, who shared this in one of his presentations, and it ties into what you said. And he posed it as a riddle at the start. He's like, when you have 3, you have 3. When you have 2, you have 2. When you have 1, you have none. Right? And you know what the answer is?
No, lay it down. I'm lost here.
Well, I was just testing your neural pathways there, Charlie.
I've never
have 3.
Yeah, so go through it one more time.
When you have 3,
yeah.
All right. When you have 3, you have 3. When you have 2, you have 2. When you have 1, you have none. What is it?
People in your business.
No. If you have one person in your business, you have one person. No, so it's choices.
Isn't that me? When I have one, it's just me, and I have no leverage.
No, but that's not. But you still have one person.
All right.
It's choices, right? Choices is the answer, or opportunities.
Oh, that is so good. I get it now.
That's what I was going to say, because when you said choices, I was like, I'll throw this in and see if he brings the. I didn't get it at the start either. I was sitting there scratching my head going, what the hell is Jeremy's been on drugs or something? What is this? But then when he said it, I was like, it makes so much sense. It's like, as you say, when you get up and you have to do something, you don't have a choice to do it because you have to do it. Like, it's the one thing you have to do, but you have to do it. So you don't have a choice. But when you have choices, you have several, like, then that's when you have choices. Otherwise, you don't have choices if you have at least one thing you have to do every day.
Oh, dude, now that I get it, I'm like, it obviously makes a lot of sense, but it's like, that is just, it's such an important thing for people to start grasping. Like, that's what's important. It's not how many zeros are in the bank account. It's like, if you're getting up and consciously getting to live the life you want to do and be financially rewarded how you want to be rewarded, that's the priority. That's got to move up the list for people.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, we've rounded out this, man. This has been huge. I think I want to steal some of yours and add them to my list.
No, I think every time we do it, we share anything, I'm always like secretly going, well, look bad if I just like write notes while Charlie's talking and the podcast. Like, can people see me? I'll just be like, yeah. Just so, what was that? Yeah, cool.
In next week's episode would just be you just take them on. But that's fine. The reason we say this stuff on a podcast is obviously we want people to steal these ideas. That's the important bit. Like, if you're listening to this and you like an idea, I'm sure me and Kim will both be happy if you steal our priorities and implement them and have massive amounts of success. In fact, that will make me really happy.
Yeah, just tell us that. Just tell us afterwards. That would be great. That's all I ask. No fees.
Now, I feel like we should talk a little bit about the association now, because it's new year, new you, and all the rest of it. And I feel like we've had some really good discussions in the more, I suppose, recent hour since before this about what we want to do. But do you want to lead the way here, or do you want me to take suit on what we're going to be doing in the association this year?
Well, look, I'll let you kick off, and I'll chime in, because I think you more well-roundedly explain things than me in this regard.
Awesome. So I'm definitely happy to take the reins. I'm excited about this. So for reference, me and Kim have a mastermind group called The Association, and our original intent was to just show people behind the scenes of how we run our businesses and allow them to ask questions, swipe and deploy our systems and processes and ideas, as well as get feedback on what they're doing. And we've been doing that for a while, but there's been one thing we constantly get more requests for. One thing that people want to know more about, and we've decided we want to actively encourage and help people do more of, because we speak about it so much, and that's joint ventures. So without doubt, number one at Crest. And would you agree with that, Kim?
Definitely. And I think it's because we probably take it for granted, but we do so much of it with what we do. And it's just, I don't think it's, I think sometimes it is, but sometimes not intentional. Like just the way that we operate is we operate from that process and we actually do it and we make them happen. And we like, this is one right here, and obviously it's something that we focused on. And I think a lot of people see that we do that and go, wow, I can see that as opportunity. And everyone now, and it's so funny, like once we started talking about it, literally every conversation I'm having, people are like, oh, and what about JVs? And what about this? And I'm just like, oh, it's just like, just reaffirming everything more and more, because it gives you so much more scope. Because yes, you can get training from us. Yes, you can get swipe and deploy systems. But I think something that builds long-term growth, stability, brand, everything is joint ventures. And when you do them properly, like it's game changing for people in their like entirety of their lives, not just their business.
It's phenomenal. I think, yeah, I agree. We overlooked it massively. When I look back on this year, I would actually say that majority of my income has come from joint ventures, in relation to a joint venture, I should say. So through the context of working with other people. So how we're going to do this in the association is we want to start, well, number one is developing a framework where people could put their details in, the type of joint ventures they want, and then how they can work with other people. And then actively, me and Kim are going to be coming into the group and helping to connect those dots, as well as sharing the ones we've been coming up with and trying to connect other people to do more together. Because if you haven't realized by now, business is a team sport. It is absolutely a place where you want to get involved with other people. So if you do want to become a member of the association, I'll make sure there's a link under to this episode to wherever you are viewing or listening. It is by application. We do vet our members because obviously if we're going to be doing joint ventures with people and helping them do that, we want to make sure you are of a standard that we would encourage people to do it. We don't want any people in there that have the wrong intentions. But please click on the link below, have a look at the association. And if you do feel you should apply, we'll follow up with some questions and bring you into the group so you can start doing JVs with people that are starting to think like this.
Yeah, and I think it's, just one JV can absolutely change the face of your business, let alone being in a group with like tens of 20s of 50s of hundreds of other people looking to do the same thing. So, just take this one, for example, you'll be able to see, and as soon as you, well, actually, Charlie, what would you give as your definition of a JV? Just for some people that may not have 100% clarity on that, if they're listening to this and going, well, I know I've heard of them and I feel like I kind of want to do one, but what specifically is it? Obviously, we've given an example of what we do here, but how would you define a JV just for those going, well, how is this actually going to help me?
Ooh, I've actually thought about this in my mind, and you won't be surprised. Of course, I've thought about this methodically and have 3 dot points on it. So in the way I see it, there's 3 types of joint ventures. Okay. So there's someone that has a product or service that aligns with someone that has an audience or access. So this is where someone comes together to promote or create some sort of way of leveraging it. Key point there is it's got to be a win-win. So it's got to be something where everyone's winning in that scenario. It's a win for the client. It's a win for the 2 JV partners. Everyone's on board to provide a higher quality of service and product to the right people. The second type of joint venture that we look at is an association joint venture. This is where you want to be seen with someone. So I'll give you a really good example. If Richard Branson said that he would like you to make content to be featured on his blog, you look at that and go, well, you would do that because you want to be associated with Richard Branson. The third type of joint venture I look at is more of one which I call like an amplifier model, which is what we're doing now. So this is people that maybe are in the same niches or the same areas or work in the same similar products, and they come together to create bigger things. So really good example is we could have each done our own podcast and Mastermind group. But you can see that by coming together, and making that a joint venture, we've been able to create something that's more than the sum of its parts. So it's a bit of a 1 + 1 = 3. Now, they're the three main ones I come across. There's a whole bunch of different creative ones depending on the type of products that are available. But ultimately, it's one of three categories I feel should be like the base of most joint ventures in some context.
I think that's good. It's a good understanding for just people to get that base knowledge. So if you've been hearing it and you've been hearing us talk about JVs or other people, at least now you have that foundational understanding of how it could help you in your business. So that's why I wanted to ask Charley that question, just to kind of wrap a little bow on it, because sometimes we do have that curse of knowledge where we say something or we reference something and we go, well, doesn't everyone understand like this thing? Like, of course, everyone knows what OCPM means. Like, why should I even describe and explain what that is? But not always does we especially when we've been in the game for a long time, you kind of forget the level, sometimes the things that you're exposed to every day that not everyone does. So hopefully if you're listening to this, that's given you some more clarity on that, but also some clarity on how that could really amplify your business just with one simple joint venture.
Absolutely. Definitely. Starting point. Now, we probably should do a whole episode on joint ventures because I'd love to dig into that in itself. But we are running close to time on this one, Kim Barrett. So have you got any final thoughts you would like to get out to the people or the listeners and subscribers of this podcast?
No, I think just make sure everyone, you tune in next week. And we've been threatening to do it, but I think in the next week or two, me and Charley are going to have to do a podcast together in the same room because we're going to be in Indonesia together. So we surely have to try and make something happen while we're there.
I'll bring my microphone. We'll absolutely have to do the first podcast next to each other in the wonderful place of Bali. So really looking forward to being at the Unstoppable Mastermind in Bali in the end of Jan. 100% doing the podcast in the same room, too. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, that's it from me.
All right, guys, that is it for this episode. Please subscribe and check out our social media, I guess, and other things. Get involved in what we do. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Till the next one, that's it from us.
I've got to confess.